You guys already know that this is part of the Caribbean Fine Art Fair 2021. It's mainly hosted virtually, as we all know, because of COVID. But we also do have the non-traditional exhibition, which we were lucky enough to have a space. It's currently hosted at Art Splash. So you can definitely visit it there to see the work of the six Barbadian artists. And we have three of them here today with us to have a conversation. So I had mentioned before that it's first thing first, it's a really good opportunity for us to have this non-traditional exhibition because it's a space to bring together artists that share a story of expressing themselves as Caribbean artists in an unprecedented way. And we're gonna have that discussion about the stories and the inspiration of each of these artists. So I'm gonna start with Akilah. Hey, Akilah, thank you for
Hi,
joining us.
thank you for having me.
So can you tell me a little bit about your journey as an artist? When did you first realize that you wanted to be an artist? Things like that.
I don't think it was ever like a realization. According to my mother, I've been drawing since I was 3. So I kind of went through school with the mindset that I was going to be an artist. I chose my subjects strategically. I did basically art, and then I was like, all right, I can do business, put it back into that because that could only more or less help. So I did like obviously POA, POB, integrated science, IT. So just general business subjects, and then art was like my main. So when I got to BCC, I applied for accounting and arts. And once I get that art interview, I was like, you know what? I don't even care if I get into accounts or not. That's where I'm going.
It's really cool. So what inspired you, well, to go into your specific field in terms of your medium and painting?
The thing is, I never like to say have a particular medium. I more consider myself to be multimedia. Once I get bored of painting, I kind of move on to drawing, and I could kind of do a little bit of sculpting as well. It just depends on like what the concept is and what I'm trying to say overall. So like when I was at BCC, I did again a few figurines. I've done coloring books. I've done puzzles. I've done obviously paintings, drawings, etc. So I was able to kind of dip my foot in like a multiple media sort of situation, and I kind of enjoy having the freedom and the flexibility to move between the mediums as well. I don't like to stick to one thing. I think certain of my series I like to more or less keep them to a general medium, but that's what I think works for that particular medium. But sometimes I'll be like, I over painting, so I'm moving on to something else for the time being. But this year I happen to be painting a lot. I don't know what it is. Maybe it's the new ideas, but painting seems to be on the agenda for now.
Okay, because I was gonna ask you if you have a favorite medium. So maybe we could say it's painting or like currently.
No, no, because sometimes paint is be frustrating to be honest. Like I would say more drawings and coloring. Like so I have like Prismacolor crayons, and I feel that I get a little bit more control because then I could layer. You could layer crayons again to create almost these different colors and like these underneath layers that you can still see, which you can create with painting. Is just a different feel. It's almost a quicker way of doing it, at least for me. I just enjoy them for different reasons.
Awesome. So kind of going on with that, can you describe your style in terms of, I mean, I see that you have a big use of color and textures, details.
Yeah, I would say maybe a mixture between pop art, surrealism, maybe realism, and what would be the other one? Probably those two and symbolism. I think those are maybe like the 4 that I generally move throughout. So while I do have a sense of realism, the surrealism comes in with a lot of like almost. I kind of look at my paintings almost like collages, like 'cause there are pieces that take different elements from different reference photos and put them together just without the organicness of a collage, which is more or less the ripped paper or magazine kind of placed together and glued down and then presented as a total piece. But I kind of look at my pieces in that way. And then I have like the hair pieces like this, which to me remind a lot of people and myself more of like pop art. Like I think the bright colors and the idea of like the pattern backgrounds. gives that feel.
Awesome. Do you have a main inspiration or driving force? I know that you do have, as you said, a lot of different types of work, but do you have like a main story that you try to tell?
I think Barbadian culture is probably the general driving force. I try to use, I'm gonna say stereotypical imagery for the lack of a better word, but the imagery that is usually used to portray the Caribbean, basically the beach, the palm trees, sand, the sun kind of situation, and kind of reimagine that in a more modern type of way. Excuse the dogs if y'all can hear them. They are not my dogs. I have no pets. They're literally the neighbor's dogs. I can't help it. Sometimes them is just act up like if them singing in a choir. So I apologize for that. But I would say Barbadian culture in general. I think when I was at BCC, that was like my main like basis for work. I was looking at the things like the ocean and the beach and the Madasali, like our folklore on top of just the generic stereotypical palm tree images. And I was trying to reimagine what the general Bajan or public thinks of Barbados now, and not what we necessarily put out there or portray to tourists of what our island more or less is. So like the series with the here is more documentary based, I would say.
Like documentation of those different
Yeah.
styles.
So then like in the next 20 to 30 years, when we probably not growing a lot of local plants and fruit, yeah, this is this. It's almost like an educational sort of situation. I would like maybe when I turn 50 to have like a show where my collectors kind of send back all the pieces and then you could just see like almost like a full gallery. Because again, I try to keep them around the 12 by 12 range. I've only recently like branched off into the 18 by 18 and 24 by 24 size ranges. So majority of them are 12 by 12. So the tiling effect you will get once you see the 50 or so or the hundreds that I would have painted by the time I turned that age would just be really interesting to me, as well as seeing the progression of style and technique and how it has like bettered or grown throughout the years.
Yeah, I think it's really important and that you understand or that you acknowledge the fact that these are really important stories for the future, for the younger generations to have an understanding of the time and also the time before us that may not have been expressed in the way that you're doing that. So that's really awesome. I'm actually gonna share one of your pieces and ask you to speak a little bit about it.
Sure.
So here, Jamar, 1999. Just give me 1 second to bring it up.
Oh, okay. I was like, good. At least it's not one on a series that we was just talking about. It's like a new one, more or less. Because those are a newer series.
Okay, can you see it?
Yeah, I can see it. As if everybody can see it, hopefully. But this piece is kind of so I started a series in 2020, which was almost like a branch off from the hair series, where I was taking the patterns from the background and putting them into the skin of the person. So I was more or less looking or exploring the idea of the people of a particular place as part of the landscape or of as a product to be consumed. And then this piece in particular is a series of work that is around the size like 2 inches by 2.5 inches. So it is around the size of what we call in Barbados a ping pong. It's ping pong size, aka is a identification photo, is the photos you use for your passport, your visas, your ID cards, your license, all those kind of images. So I wanted to keep again the size similar to a ping pong because I think that adds so much value. Because a piece like this, even with this amount of detail, even if it was big, it just becomes a portrait, while having and seeing it in this context reminds you of the nostalgic ping pong sizes. Like everybody, I'm sure everybody can remember getting the first passport or the first visa and you hearing, yeah, you gotta go and get a couple ping pongs from downtown and go to Justice Peace and get the back signed, you know what I mean? So a couple of these even in this series have like the stamp of like cancel or the passport and the dates, like those kind of authentic stamps that you would get on the original photos.
It's really awesome. Thank you for that.
Thank you.
So one last question. Is there
No
anything that
problem.
you would want to share to younger generations of artists coming up in Barbados or the Caribbean today?
Oh, this could be a loaded question. I say just do it, to be honest. I mean, yes, it is a hard profession by any day. The way how populated the world is, I think any profession is going to be hard. I think you need to have the passion and the drive to do art, but also need to have the mindset that it is a business and it needs to be taken seriously, just like anything else. But also don't expect just because you got a little bit of talent that can help to push you anywhere. You know what I mean? You need to be able to like seriously buckle down and see it as a business. You need to push it and market it and treat it with respect in the same way, but it is going to be a little bit hard. I don't think you necessarily need to go to school to do it, but I think school helps because, again, when I went to BCC, I think they helped a lot with critical thinking and having people to bounce ideas off of and having critiques. Because, again, you might think your work is working and then somebody see it and is like, yeah, that ain't really saying what you think it's saying at all. Like, you might be like, yeah, you can't see the symbolism here and this and that. And then people is like, nope, that is not reading at all. That is not successful. And that your work could be pretty, but it could also fail because it's not reading the way that you need it to read and it's not reaching the audience you need to reach. So I would say do it. But keep in mind it's just as hard as anything else.
Yeah, it is true. And I think that that idea of the collaboration and talking to each other is important. And especially if you're sharing stories that you want to share with, say, the diaspora internationally, if somebody in Barbados, say it's a story about the Caribbean or Barbados, if locally
Mm-hmm.
that symbolism isn't understood, then it definitely would be lost in translation. So yeah, I do agree that that would be very important. Thank you
Yeah,
very
it's
much.
beneficial.
Yeah,
Thank you.
thank you. So just because a few more people have joined, just gonna speak a little bit, just a little blurb about non-traditional, and then we'll you guys can, if you guys have any questions for Akilah, you can definitely put them in the Q&A or in the chat. We also will have a question, we'll open up for questions at the end as well. And then after the question, we can go on to Brandon. So in terms of non-traditional, the theme is for the exhibition is an exploration of the different and uncommon expressions of Caribbean identity with a focus on the explorational, traditional, and then digital art, which would be a conversation that we will be having with the two other artists tomorrow. So we didn't get any questions as yet, so we will go on to Brandon. We'll be asking very similar questions. So hi, Brandon, how are you doing?
I'm pretty good, thanks.
Thank you for
It
joining.
feels like nowadays, like you lose track of the days, but today feels like Saturday, and I feel pretty happy about that. So I spent some time outside. When I say outside, I mean my backyard, but nonetheless, I needed that.
Yeah, no, it's important to be in nature. So, can you
Yeah.
tell me a little bit about your journey as an artist?
Let's see. Initially, from being like I don't know 8, 9, like in my childhood years, I was really much. I really appreciated animated series like cartoons, like whether it be Ben 10 or Naruto, whatever. And that was what had, you know, inspired me to start drawing a lot. And I was doing that for years, but doing this for years, bearing in mind that art wasn't taken seriously within my household. So for the most part, I was enjoying it for myself and on a hobby level. And then through secondary school, when I had the interesting experience of going out of the public school system and then suddenly into the private school system at Codrington, the international school. So I was surrounded by people from like all over the world, all kinds of talent, and even in my art class, I felt like I was surrounded by a bunch of prodigies. Is that how it's pronounced?
Yeah.
And that made me feel a little insecure. I'm not gonna lie. Well, when it came to painting, like I met some amazing painters from like the age of 12, 14, and that made me feel as though I should just stick to drawing because that was my strong suit, even though it wasn't that like technical or skillful at the time. But nonetheless, I at least had the passion. I had the love for it, and my my teacher, Carla Hines, even saw that and encouraged me and pushed me. And it was around 16 that she really saw that I could become an artist. But I told her like, no way, there's no way that's gonna happen. But eventually, when we started having a conversation of one day there being like a national gallery here, and I would want to be a part of that one way or another, she said I could totally do it. And I remember going home to have that conversation with my parents, and like they were so shocked that they didn't say anything at the dinner table right there and then. But the following day, there was like, nah, there's no way that's gonna happen. Absolutely no way. I was like, okay, fine. So 16, 17, 18, I had it in my mind that maybe I can get into architecture. And at that point in time, I wasn't doing that much drawing, but I was practicing like doing floor plans of like hotels and hospitals and houses, mostly houses. And that is what I applied for to study overseas. But then, long story short, that fell through. So I took a gap year. I went back into drawing, but more realistically. It's amazing how even when you read a book, just reading a book can make you a better drawer in terms of like understanding values and shading and yada yada yada. So I took a specialization in like doing black and white realistic portraits, doing that for about a year until I got bored. And then I picked up oil pastels for the first time to bring a lot of color into my sketchbooks here and there. But I didn't take art seriously for myself until I was about 19. I suddenly left a job that I was in for about 2 years, and um, I guess you can say I ejected myself from a situationship. So there was a lot of things that was going on, like nothing was working, and I was like, okay, I need to do something that I could express myself, like have an outlet, the healthiest outlet possible. Because in the latter years of my teenagehood, it was just alcohol and smoking, and I was just so sick of it to the point where I needed to do something else. So I got back into drawing black and white, and then that bored me. I started doing oil pastel, but I wanted to take another step forward since I had grown some comfort with colors. And that was when I had first started painting like ever in, I think it was October, November 2019. And I started reading some books on Basquiat and George Condo, if you ever heard of that artist from New York. And I started to realize that each and every artist, like visual arts is a language, and each and every artist has their own accent, I like to call it, or their dialect when they paint or draw. So I needed to find my voice, if you get what I'm saying, my style in what it is that I do. So in the beginning, it was very rigid and chaotic because obviously I was taking inspiration from Basquiat because he painted as if though he just didn't give a damn. And I felt like I needed to have that kind of confidence with what it was that I was creating. But I find that as time went on, uh, I was refining my skills a little more to try and find my own voice instead of taking so much inspiration from those before me. And I feel that that's a process that I feel that every creative should go through. But nonetheless, that is basically how I started. I tried taking so many different avenues to please other parties to the point where there was nothing to do but create.
So basically staying true to yourself, which is, I think, really important. So in terms of your medium and painting, I think it's very interesting, and I want you to just talk a little bit about, when you started painting and how you got into that.
I got into painting in November 2019, and it was I my knowledge. Okay, so I haven't studied art within school since 2016. So 3 years after that, um, whatever remnants of what I was taught, um, I basically tried to salvage it in any way that I can. I have to admit that I felt personally that my skills were on a basic level. So if you look at my earliest work, a lot of my work tends to be around primary colors. So there would be one piece where there's a lot of yellow, another piece where there's a lot of blue, and another piece where there could be some red. Red is my least favorite color, but there was a I want to say almost a sharp learning curve as to understanding how I could use color, how do I blend, how do I shade, how do I You think what I'm trying to say? Like I literally had to teach myself. I don't think I am self-taught in the traditional sense because I did do some formal training. Um, but it was in the beginning. I don't want to say it was hard because I don't think it's hard if you are going with the mantra of I'm doing what I feel like. So yeah, that was my experience with painting, and I feel that painting is the best medium for me personally because when you either have like thin or thick amounts of paint on your brush and you just go wild, that is one of the most liberating feelings ever. I feel like it takes more skill to be a great drawer than it does to be a great painter, just in my opinion.
For you.
Because I just feel like with drawing, there's so many more rules from my experience and just from what I've observed. I feel like there's a lot more that you can get away with in a painting. I mean, for goodness sake, we live in a time where there's a lot of dripping art and a lot of like doodles. If you get what I'm saying.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's still definitely a gift because when I pick up something and just try to paint, it's different. Not saying it's always bad, but I think there's also a skill in that you have like an innate skill to be able to manipulate the brush. It's different. I think manipulating a pencil for me personally is a lot easier than manipulating a paintbrush. But that's awesome to hear your experience with that. So, um, what do you have like a main inspiration or driving force? I know you would have started painting in 2019, so maybe you're also exploring different subject matter, but currently maybe is there like a main inspiration?
Well, my main well, there's several actually, but over time I come to realize that I've become, especially since I'm studying politics at UE at the moment. My courses that I'm doing is actually based in history, so I'm actually learning a lot more um, than I ever have about Bajan history and Caribbean history and the history of our politics also. And I never thought that that would be something that I would be interested in exploring within my art, but I can't help but be curious. So I find that nowadays I want to do more work surrounding this idea of our past and how does our past dictate the current political, geographical, and cultural landscape that we live in today. Obviously, that being very partially set from plantation culture. And I've been very curious about doing paintings surrounding cane fields and sugar. And well, to give you an idea, just a hint, later on this year, I am doing a group exhibition with some artists that I've brought together, and the theme is going to be around food. I'm not going to say who is in this group yet, but I'm really excited about um, this group exhibit that I have coming up. It's going to be around food and how is food portrayed in Barbados. How do we handle it? Um, what is it about our history that influences the taste that we have in Barbados? Like, how does sauce come about? Why do we use these parts? Why do some islands use ears and tongue and others not at all? There's a stark difference between Dominican sauce and Bajan sauce. Where did palau come from? Why are there so many different variations on the southeastern islands of the Caribbean, or the cultivation of coffee? So I want to have work that explores these questions, answers them, portrays them in very thought-provoking ways. For the most part, I want to do work that tries to question ourselves and also try to set some foundation that could project us into figuring out who we are as people and who we want to be. Because I feel like Barbados, when did we become independent from 1969? 66? 66, right? I
Yeah.
feel like we're still going through that decolonization phase, and I feel like art takes a big part in that because the media that we consume is majority American, Canadian, and British, and that says a lot. I feel like we need to expose ourselves with our own content because it's a reflection, you know, and it's important for setting. I don't want to say standards, but you get what I'm trying to say. Like we need to.
It's like
Yeah, our
understanding.
future. Yeah, our future is like heavily set on based on what our values are and what we consider to be our cultural identity, and that is what I want my art to be. I mean, in the early stages, it was just for fun and expressing myself, and it being observations from my work life within restaurants. But I feel like I want my art to take a little bit more of a serious turn. I want it to feel more Bajan, trying to portray Bajanisms within my work without having to add the palm trees and the generic stuff that Akilah would have mentioned. I mean, on the contrary, my most recent pieces, Day and Night, that are being exhibited with CaFA at the moment for non-traditional, that does have some beach references. However, I wanted to portray it differently, uh, you know, in an expressionist sort of way, um, deconstructing the landscape to be portrayed in a different way. Because I mean, it's colorful as hell, and it did that. That those pieces in particular had paid their references to my personal life, my love life, yada yada yada.
So I'll actually pull up that piece and you can just add a little bit more about it. And then
Okay.
we'll open up once again. If anyone has any questions, you can definitely place them in the Q&A or in the chat and I can express them to the artist. Right, so you can see your piece. Right, so can you just tell us a little bit more about the expression that you have in this piece and maybe, what it means, day? I know it has a contrast, it's day and night, but we can just speak about this one today.
Right. So well, first of all, the title is a reference to Kid Cudi's song Day and Night. However, what this painting actually means is, well, a few months ago, my girlfriend started telling me that she loves me more than daylight. No, sunlight. She loves me more than sunshine. And so that kind of stuck with me. And about 2 months after she started telling me that, I started to tell her that I love her more than moonlight. Yeah, there you go, moonlight. So that was why I created Day and Night, because it's supposed to be a commentary and expression of our relationship, and in contrast to one another, because her and I are different, like day and night. So, but stylistically, I wanted to pay some homage to my origins in drawing, and that is why I had done the trees and the shadow of the tree in the rough way that I had done. And there wasn't too much thought. As for most of my work, they tend to be spontaneous in the way that I do the bubbles, how the rain is dripping, the cloud, the sun. I wanted it to be vibrant and have a lot of personality. And when you walk into the room, like there's no way you can't see it. That's probably the first thing that you're gonna see. And that was how I felt when I did this work along with Night also.
And I remember that you mentioned that there's this like white area beyond the rain that kind of has a little
Right.
story to itself as well.
And there's also the significance of the white gap in the center of both pieces. And the reason why I left that white gap is because it's supposed to symbolize for tomorrow, as we never know what it looks like.
Thank you.
Personally, I thought that was cute. I'm not sure what the viewers might think, but
Awesome. I'm going to bring up John next. I think he's having a little bit of difficulties, but thank you very much for sharing that. And the last question then would be, do you have anything to share with the younger generation of upcoming artists today in Barbados and the Caribbean?
my advice would be to reinforce what Akilah has said earlier. Treat your art like a business, one. Two, price your art as if though it's being seen by an international audience, not only by Bajans. And make sure that you're doing don't be afraid to like put some investment into your business also, whether it's getting materials or looking for learning materials to help yourself become a better artist or the artist that you want to be. Have confidence in your ideas. and don't be shy with your prices. Honestly, um, there's a whole market out there that you could be involved in, and I feel that that's vitally important. And don't be shy to do something a little weird or different. I see, like, it's so funny because when I first started painting, I was wondering like where are all the weird artists in Barbados? But like over this past year, like there's a lot. There's a lot. But I want them to really push their work through the Instagram, pay for the ads. Like you have to do whatever it takes for your artwork to be seen. Do not wait for an opportunity. Pay for the ads. Ask cafes and restaurants if you can show your work in there. You have to do everything that you can for your work to be seen. Otherwise, it's not going to be as great as an experience as you may want it to be, and it's going to be hard either way. But if you put in your all, like you really put in your all, then you will reap the fruits of your labor. And that's how it felt for me, and I'm sure Akilah and John feel the same way along with the other artists.
Yeah, I mean, I actually found out about most of you guys as artists through the social media platform because I wouldn't have been in Barbados or in the US. So that's exactly, how I found out about you guys. So you guys definitely do a really good job with that. And it's an example that it
And I
does work.
feel like our art along with other artists that are pushing to do very different, very abstract work, like it doesn't get any more authentic of a Barbados than that. So I feel that's important. Okay, I'm done talking now.
No, it's great. Thank you very much.
Hi everyone, my name is Alex Gibson, and I am a participating artist in the exhibition Non-Traditional, curated by Zoe Osborne. I'm really sorry that I can't be there with you right now, but I just wanted to send a quick video to tell you a bit more about myself and my practice. I am an interdisciplinary artist based in Vancouver, BC. I did my associate degree in visual arts at the Barbados Community College and my Bachelor of Media Arts at Emily Carr University of Art and Design. And a bit more about my practice. My work explores ways in which we can decolonize heteronormative Caribbean sexualities and gender to make space for new genders and new bodies. And my work sort of situates itself in between traditional drawing and painting methods and new media animation methods. A little bit more about my works in the show without going into too much explanation about them. I was very interested in ways that we can deconstruct existing forms. The works are on paper, and works on paper generally tend to be framed when presented, but I've installed grommets and chains as a way to hang them, giving the works a more sort of sculptural and tactile quality. They read sort of along the lines of tapestry more than works on paper. And those sort of metal structures also are a reference to the motif in the works of the chain link fence. And I was very inspired by the British artist Chris O'Feely at the time, who did a photo series in Trinidad where he was looking at the structure of the chain link fence, and it's very colonial past of dividing land and protecting property. And his photo series really deconstructed that very colonial structure. And so I'm super interested in ways that we can deconstruct these existing forms and decolonize them, and find ways to make new forms. I started drawing and painting from a very, very young age. I've always created things for as long as I can remember, and I think that has always been the driving force for me in pursuing a professional career as an artist, is this need to create, and this passion for creating and making work. And I think if I had to give the younger Barbadian or Caribbean generation any piece of advice in as an artist, I think the passion needs to be there. Is that should be your driving force, because at the end of the day, what you create is going to reflect how you are thinking and feeling at the time. And I think as long as you always have that innate need to make something, that whatever you create will be authentic to yourself.
So we're gonna go on to John. Hello, John. How are you doing today?
Hey Zoe, I'm doing well. Thanks for everyone viewing for joining us as well.
So going through the similar questions, because I think even though it's the same questions, everyone has like such a different story. So can you tell me a little bit about your journey as an artist, and maybe when you first realized you wanted to be, or maybe you fell into it?
Good question. Yeah, I think for me, it kind of started around the time when I was
I think it just froze for John. We're just gonna give it a little minute for it to come back up for him. But thank you guys once again for being here. Once again, if there's any questions, definitely place it. I think John's back, so
yeah.
you can continue.
Sorry. Yeah, my Wi-Fi is a little spotty, but yeah, for the most part, I kind of started out from a young age, around 3 or 4 years old. My dad, he would often draw, and he would kind of like slide the paper over to me, and I would do my little thing. So that's kind of like the very first interaction with drawing or creating some type of art piece that I remember. From there, it was being exposed to my dad. My dad is a priest, and at the time, he had a church in Barbados, and I just remember like these large stained glass windows, right? And you see the different depictions of Jesus and the angels and everything. And to me, that was like my first interaction with a painting, right? Yes, it's stained glass, but the light shining through, vibrant colors, it's still um, related to painting in a way. And so that was maybe the first time again. I wasn't exposed to a lot of art history when I was in Barbados. I was at Dyton Griffith Secondary, and my mom, my mom was my biggest supporter, and she was one that would make sure that I applied to all the different contests and everything. I remember one time in particular, this one was about environmental protection or something, and I kind of created this painting, and it ended up winning first place. So kind of like winning something, feeling good about yourself that you created this thing, it drives you to want to continue. Of course, having strong backing from family or friends, but at the end of the day, it really comes down to you as a person. And so I got the opportunity to move to New York after completing secondary school. My dad, he had moved a few years prior. And so I was in Brooklyn, New York, and that really exposed me to street art, graffiti, tagging from being in Brooklyn. And so I decided I wanted to go to school for graphic design. So I went to college in SUNY Potsdam. Is like State University of New York at Potsdam, which is upstate New York. And that's where I kind of got my BFA in graphic design. But during my thesis show for like the end of the year, I really wanted to just express myself. I felt as though I hadn't given myself enough time to really try different things out. And so I turned to painting. And the body of work that I created for my BFA show, it was geared more toward, or basically it stemmed from an assignment that I had in college. And the assignment was to create a painting without using your hands, right? So I basically took a drill. I took a drill and some paint and, just kind of let the paint drip on the drill. And, of course, as you turn it, you see all these different splatters and everything. So really became interested in expressionism, abstract expressionism. Once I graduated from college, I got the opportunity to work at the Museum of Modern Art in New York. And then that really opened up my eyes to, just looking at so many different paintings like Jackson Pollock's, Picasso's, all of the greats, right? But then even though I was looking at these works, they didn't really have a lot of Black people in them, in these spaces. And so I decided afterward, like I really wanted to go back to school to do painting and drawing. And so that's kind of what I got my MFA in, painting and drawing, but a primary focus in printmaking as well, and specifically screen print. So I paint, I draw, I have like this graphic design background which I use to help me with silk screen and screen printing. So, yeah.
I actually wanted to then ask you about the different mediums that you use.
Yeah, so very mixed media based right now. I also do some performance. When I was at LSU, Louisiana State University, I got the chance to go to Ireland. So I was kind of playing around with the landscape and found some objects and decided to use a bathtub and some seaweed that I would find from like the coast. And Ireland has this thing where they basically do seaweed baths. I don't know if people do it in Barbados, no, but seaweed baths are like the thing. I know there's a lot of sargassum, and I guess people are still trying to figure out how to use it, but seaweed baths, that's the thing. People are making a lot of money from that. So I did a performance where I was basically washing myself partly nude and just really exploring, right? So painting, drawing, performance, screen print, yeah. I kind of use all these different mediums to talk about Black masculinity. I think it's kind of like a coming of age for me. And I think as a Black man, or as even a Black boy growing up, being in these different spaces from Barbados to New York, you're exposed to different things. And there were a lot of things that I had to unlearn as a man, right? And that's something that I would love to kind of touch on a little bit, like there's something called toxic masculinity, which I'm really interested in talking about with other men as well. I think I've only learned this from talking to women, talking to Black women specifically. There are a lot of things that Black men need to unlearn and relearn. So that's what my work really focuses on.
Really interesting, very impactful, and very important. And it's really awesome that you're doing that and having that conversation through your work, because I think that, it's one thing to have a conversation, but when you have something that people can engage with in terms of art and kind of have their own understanding of it, it's not language, so it's something that's universal. I think it's really important. So thank you for doing that as a Black woman. So I'm going to pull up one of your pieces, Sunman, and we will just get you to talk a little bit about that.
Sure.
Yes, so here it is.
Cool. So Sunman the title comes from reading and watching some videos on Sun Ra, who is kind of like very much a jazz musician, but he was also interested in like Afrofuturism, thinking about, he would literally consider himself to be like an alien, so to speak. So he's this Black man who is wearing, these Afrocentric outfits and everything, very much interested in performance art. But he has this idea of being something bigger than what he already is, right? And so this is kind of Sunman, this painting here was a start for me in terms of thinking about a larger body of work. I was using spray paint. I was using imagery that was basically coming from my image itself. Being a student for so long, after a while, you kind of get used to the marble cover in like notebooks, right? And so in a way that kind of found itself into my work. The image of the face that you kind of see, it comes from the Black barbershop, kind of like hairstyle guide posters. So I would usually appropriate these images of Black men, and in a way, the distortion came about from, not necessarily trying to make this person recognizable, but trying to elevate it to a different, kind of like expanding this idea of what Black people or what Black men can become. So it's kind of a metaphor, really, this distortion of Black faces. And also still interested in abstract expressionism, played around with markers, oil sticks, that type of thing. It was also, like Brandon, also very much interested in Basquiat. So that's one artist I was looking at as well. Just for his freedom. And, if you ever go back and watch his videos when he's speaking, you can really see that he was really searching for freedom in his work, and also just to be a free Black man, to be able to express himself as an artist. So there's some Power Rangers in there too, quickly. Like childhood nostalgia in a way. Power Rangers symbolizing this idea of power and what power can look like. So just inspiration really comes from a lot of different things. It comes from being Black, it comes from being a Black man, it comes from being from Barbados, to then living in Brooklyn. All my experiences combined into one thing. And so, yeah.
Really interesting. Yeah, I just saw the Power Rangers in there. Pretty fun.
Okay, I have one quick question for John.
Sure.
John, in Sunman and in your other pieces, particularly that you've chosen to exhibit in non-traditional, do the Black and white elements, are they significant within the pieces? Do you feel like if you had gone for like the actual skin tones, would it have been as powerful in the work as opposed to using the black and white that you chose to go with?
Sorry, I missed. It's literally cut out. My Wi-Fi is kind of bad, but I missed some of what you said just now, Brandon. Sorry.
Okay, no, that's great. Do you feel like what you wanted to portray in the artwork in Sunman and the other two pieces that you submitted for CaFA, do you feel like it would have done the work justice had you gone for the actual skin color of the man? Or do you feel like it's important that they were specifically portrayed black and white?
That's a good question. I think, well, they're portrayed in black and white because it kind of speaks to like my graphic background, graphic design, being a graphic artist. I think now my newer work, I'm kind of playing around with actual skin tones, a lot of browns, but still very much so based in just like neutral colors, black, white. I'm not sure. That's a good question. I'm really not sure if it would have it would definitely have a different feel to it as opposed to just being black and white. But yeah.
That was
I'm
definitely.
not sure if you can hear me. Can you hear me?
Oh, we couldn't hear the last part, but we did hear your response. Awesome. Once again,
Yeah,
guys,
sorry about that.
no problem. Guys, if you have any questions, you can definitely drop them. So the last question I have is there anything you would want to share to the younger generation of artists upcoming in Barbados and the Caribbean?
Okay. Yeah, my advice, follow your heart. Try not to listen to, I mean, we're all going to get advice. It's really up to you as an artist to really find what it is you're looking for. I would say the biggest advice I can say is maybe pay attention to what you pay attention to. As in, if you like painting, follow painting. If you like, I don't know, drawing birds, stick with birds. But there's gonna come a time where you need to expand and, you know, learn more about what it is that you're doing. So it's always good to, you know, find some books on painting if it is that's what you want to do. Yeah, I think both Akilah and Brandon said it, you know, perfectly. It's being an artist is very tough. It's not easy, and I think a lot of people think that is, you know, people who are not artists think that it might be easy, but it's definitely stressful. It is filled with long nights, as I'm sure my fellow artists would agree. Long nights, long hours, being in the studio by yourself, and sometimes it's lonely. Just trying to, you know, hone in on your craft. So it takes a lot of work, but it's definitely doable. Whatever it is that success looks like to you, if it is just wanting to create a painting so that it can be in a gallery to show representation of you and your identity, that is important as well. Representation is important. But at the end of the day, don't give up. Even though if you might be stressing in the studio on a specific painting, that's just one day. The next day comes around, you can have a completely different outlook on the painting itself. You can find things about yourself that you didn't realize you like within the work. Yeah, I'll stop there.
I think everything you said, I mean, everything that all you guys have said is really important, because I could imagine myself. I mean, I wouldn't, you know, I'm in the creative field, and I think that it can be very hard. I think sometimes growing up in Barbados or any place that's very traditional, because you don't really have a lot of examples of people that, you know, are working with as an artist and considering it successful, or a lot of people encouraging you to do so. And one thing that you said, John, pay attention to what you pay attention to, I think is really important, because you know, you kind of see after you end up where you are that, oh, it made sense. Like when I was a kid, I always played with these things, or, you know, I held on to this and I was always interested in it. And sometimes we kind of get pushed away, being expected to, you know, pursue a different field. But if you really just, if it's something you like, there must be a reason. If you follow that, be true to yourself. That's something that was mentioned as well. Then, you know, you will find your story and you'll be able to tell it. So that's really awesome. We had, well, it's not a question, but Sandra Osborne said that they wanted to comment on the fact that they welcome the opportunity to hear the artists on their stories and their work, and that she's inspired. So thank
Thank
you.
you, Sandra. Good comment.
So sorry, there's a feedback. So I just wanted to open up the space again for the artists. If you guys have, I know Brandon mentioned he has a upcoming group exhibition that, you know, it's a little bit of a secret, but he gave us a little bit of information. Does anyone else have? I know Akilah, you have an exhibition that's supposed to be up and coming. So yeah, each person, maybe Akilah and then John and Brendan, if there was anything else you wanted to say, you guys can let everyone know what to be looking out for.
Well, I feel like this is so much to unpack, because I thought To be honest, even with COVID going on, I feel like everybody kind of looking to the creative fields again, because everything needs to be visual to be more or less, like Brandon was saying, a language. So now that we can be in person, I feel like a lot of people actually come into the creative sector looking for stuff. So more opportunities actually coming up. So I have a group exhibition with 2 other artists coming up in April. Because of us being on lockdown in Barbados, we still trying to figure out or finalize the date, because again, it's been pushed off since last year, but tentatively it's supposed to be around the second week of April as of now. So that will be, if you follow me on socials at Strictly Artistic, you'll be able to find out more about that as it's posted. And right now I have an article on Shout Out Miami, just basically asking me about my practice and my work again. So if you're interested in that, you could just check my Instagram or my Facebook at Strictly Artistic, and you'll be able to find the links there.
Awesome, thank you. John, do you have?
Yeah, I'm actually showing I'm actually showing an exhibition over in Savannah, Georgia. It's kind of on revival and rest and the importance of rest. So really excited for that show. It's currently at Sulphur Studios in Savannah, Georgia. And then I have a solo show there next year that I'm kind of preparing for. Stressful, but I'm trying to make it through. And then in the fall, from October 6th to about December 15th, I'm going to be doing an artist residency at Anderson Ranch, which is like very prestigious artist residency. Really excited for it, looking forward to that. So I, more freedom to work on larger projects as well. And actually, if we can go back quickly and talk about some advice, definitely check out artist residencies. I think it's a great opportunity to be exposed with other artists as well who are outside of our immediate fields. Great for exposure and even to travel. It's great. I've never been to Snowmass Village, which is on the outskirts of Aspen in Colorado. So a lot of skiing, a lot of snowing I'll be doing. Looking forward to that in the winter. So yeah.
Congrats, and that's exciting for both Akilah and John. Brandon, is there anything else, or is the kind of snippet you gave us about your exhibition kind of your teaser?
Adding on to what John was saying about him having his show now and also an exhibit that he's preparing for next year, I've come to realize that in the early stages of being an artist or any kind of creative, I realized that pretty much every year you gotta be making sure that you're organizing a show for you to exhibit, or that you are involved in a show pretty much every year. You think of what I'm trying to say? Like, you have to like going back to what I was saying earlier, you gotta make sure that your artwork is being shown, and you gotta be consistent, almost on an annual basis. And also in regards to medium, I mean, I was drawing for 10 years only to then figure out that I really love painting. And so don't always look to experiment. I might even go into sculpture, like, who knows, or continue painting, but instead of using canvas, maybe sew in some duck cloth or whatever. Try and find something that is distinct to you, even if it's painting on cardboard boxes and building human figures. I remember years ago at NIFCA, I saw, maybe you guys remember it, but years ago in NIFCA, they had these samurai warriors that were entirely built of bamboo. Anybody remember that from Sir Lord Ergison?
I wasn't.
Oh, well, it was pretty dope. So anything is possible, man.
Definitely. I think that's a good common theme in this conversation, to be true to yourself and, just make it work for you. Anything is possible, just do it. So we're coming to the end of the conversation. We don't have any more questions. So unless there's anything else that you guys want to share, thank you for all the attendees. And thank you, obviously, to the artists for being part of the show and also part of this conversation. Tomorrow, we will be having a conversation with Sydney McCooney and Housing Area, the two digital illustration artists. And as I mentioned before, Alex Gibson, who was unfortunately unable to make it today, he pre-recorded his responses, and we will be sharing that online. So you definitely can look for that on Mahogany Culture. And if you guys have not already checked the exhibition, you can find it at www.caribbean.global. And there you can view and purchase the art. And if you want to see the art of the artists that are here, you can look at the non-traditional exhibition. So thank you guys so much and have a good remainder of the day. And hopefully we will see you tomorrow. Bye.